Hi there, good evening and welcome to your Sunday show on the Four Lads Had a Dream podcast network, our first Sunday show of November. My name's Scott Patterson. If you're joining us on our YouTube channel tonight, thank you. If you're looking at us on Facebook or X, we're very grateful for your company tonight. Lots to discuss on an evening where Rangers crash out the Premier Sports League Cup semi-final, and lots to speak about it. I try to do an agenda every time we start this podcast, and it's really difficult to do one for tonight because there's loads of things that are quite raw. So we'll get to them between now and circa 9 o'clock. I'm conscious Dougie's on. And before I go through everyone and welcome them on, I should say a big thank you to our main show sponsor that are looking after us for the season. iSport Media are looking after us from now until May, and notwithstanding those guys, our other pod partners, Black Rooster, CSD Air Conditioning, Athol Industrial Solutions, Cliveview Joinery, and Art of Gold, all supporting us between now and May, and grateful for it. Dougie, I know you're a wee bit hoarse after being poorly for a week, so maybe we might actually get that hour tonight, but all things considered, how are you?
Scurred. I'm just sick and tired of going to Hampden and coming back really disappointed, and I can't remember the last time that I've left Hampden without a controversial decision going against Rangers, which we will get to. But honestly, Scott, I'm just sick of it. I'm so disappointed.
Yeah, roger that. Rob, you are well?
Same as Diggy, to be honest. It was nice to spend some time with the fellow Bears on the Arthur Newman Loyal and the pre and post match venue for a few beers. But apart from that, the football ruins another weekend. Unfortunately, like Diggy said, I'm sure there will be some discussion around the level of officiating that we saw in Scottish football yet again today.
Sheryl, the pressure's on you to brighten up a Sunday night.
Do you know what? I'm the same as the guys. I actually had a great day. I had a lovely day, aside from the kind of bit in the middle. But what I will say is I was at the Charity Foundation Ball last night, and that was excellent. And they raised an absolute stack of cash for the Rangers Charity Foundation. So there's your wee bit of positivity, but unfortunately that has to come for last night. And I had a nice Italian meal. I should
I didn't
make sure that...
Brilliant, I love it. That's class.
It was an Italian meal that I enjoyed before the game.
I'm glad I was mute there, Sheryl, to be honest. That's that could have been something said.
So, listen, as I said, it's before we start this, every other week when we're on, as you know, we try and go through a very high-level skeletal agenda, and sometimes we've got lots in there, sometimes we don't have that much. Tonight, it's been really difficult to do, as I say, because there's a rawness over various different bits and pieces that happened today. I've written down Chermiti, Giga, 2 permanent signings in from the summer that started today. Tav back in, Dio back in, referee decisions, chances we missed, chances we conceded, concern over the players that are left between now and January for Danny Rule, first half desire compared to second half desire, Raskin chance before half time, Gassama chances after he came on. Dougie, I agree with you completely. Coming away from Hampden again in a match against Celtic, feeling, and it's difficult to speak about this properly because you're always deemed as just being a bad loser, a sore loser. You are one of them, in air commas. But I think we've seen a couple of incidents today that kind of back up that feeling of just being so pissed off with the way that the Rangers-Celtic games generally are being officiated right now.
Let's just get straight into it, Scott. Why not, eh? You could have taken me for dinner or buttered me up talking about the starting 11, something. But no, let's get straight into the decisions.
Went for a nice Italian, you know?
Could I went for a nice Italian? Is it an Italian something? No, it's not even good. I'm not
Get
going to go
there. Get on with it.
Right. Decisions. Honestly, I said at the beginning, right? I can't remember the last time I went to Hampden and there's not been a controversial decision given against Rangers, right? There's so many elements to this. There's the actual decisions, and then there's the speed of thought, right? And when I mean speed of thought, Asgard, it was almost instantaneous that the minute that unfolded, the red card was out, delighted to get him off the pitch, right?
Yeah.
We can go through and talk about so many instances in the game. Maeda, right? Maeda must have put in about 10 challenges before he seen a yellow card that was for a high boot to the face, right? Maeda is allowed to play his own game throughout the entire game until he gets that booking, where he's allowed to break up play, kick players off the ball. You've seen it against Hibs last weekend. Magoma was having an absolutely brilliant game. He then picked up a booking and he then couldn't play his natural game, and it impacted him quite heavily. It might sound really petty, right, to talk about that first, but it really riles me, and it's not a one-off. See, guys, in Maeda, every single time we play against Celtic, he is picking up needless fouls and he doesn't get booked for them. What happened to persistent fouling, accumulating a yellow card, right? So Maeda's one. You've got various incidents that have happened in the game today. Ralston, by the way, had a lot of persistent fouls as well in the build up to the moment. We're our biggest worst enemy here, though, because I'm going to just talk about supporters and Danny Rowe here for a second, because straight away the narrative amongst Rangers fans is, do you know what, Asgard was a red card, right? So it went down as serious foul play. There was zero intent from Asgard, right? Which means it's then an interpretation of whether or not it's serious foul play. You could argue that as he's mistimed it, it's a amber, right? It's yellow to red. For me, I think it's a red card, right? But we're our worst enemy because we think it's a red card because as Rangers supporters, we're pretty honest, right? So we sit there and we say, do you know what? It's a red card. Let's just flip it on its head, right? The Celtic goal that was chopped off for offside, right? The Celtic narrative amongst supporters in the club already is that shouldn't have been chopped off for offside. They won the game 3-1, and they're already saying that they are the victims because they got a goal chopped off that should never have been chopped off. It was offside, right? It might have been a ball. I couldn't care if it's a ball or not. It was offside. But they've already started that narrative so that it deflects away from all the other incidents that they get a goal chopped off, which, by the way, see that goal? That was the quickest free kick I've ever seen in my life. Celtic are just allowed to referee games themselves. They just put the ball down and played it when the referee's his back turned to it, and he just lets them go with it because, well, you know what, it's Celtic.
But Dougie, that caught us because I actually thought that would get stopped. See, when they took that free kick that quickly, I thought, no, he's going to stop them and pull them back. But also, we weren't ready. We, as a team, we got completely caught by that.
But we were sleeping through the game, and we can go on to that later as well, right? So we've got that incident. I started talking about the Ralston one. I better go back to the Ralston one. Again, where I was building up to in terms of our own worst enemies, because there's already Rangers fans right now saying he's jumped in front of the ball to block it and it's accidentally hit his arm because, do you know what, there's nowhere else he can put his arm. His arm has gone out and it has stopped the ball going into the net, right? Celtic played Kilmarnock earlier this season and the ball ricocheted off a Kilmarnock player, bounced up off a Kilmarnock player who did that, kind of like blocking it against his body, and he got booked. How Ralston's not been booked for jumping in front of the ball with his arm out is beyond me. I'm in the West Stand, it's right in front of me, and I am screaming for the red card. And I'm thinking, when that goes to VAR and the penalty's confirmed, that is a red card, he's off the park. He's not red carded, it's just beyond me. Steve Conroy on Twitter right away was saying, how is that not a red card? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then you've got the Austin Trustee, right? You've got all these definitions of serious foul play, violent conduct, and it was deemed that he didn't connect hard enough with Jack Butland's head, right? Let's just pause that for a second, right? Tello Asgard got a straight red card because he flicked the ball over his head and he put his foot out to control it, and the way that his foot was pointing, he connected with a Celtic player, and we're all in agreement as Rangers fans that was serious foul play. Austin Trustee, the goalie, has the ball in his hands, he's running forward and he lashes out with his boot and connects with the goalkeeper's face. But we have to believe that that's not violent conduct because there's not enough power in the kick. Where are we in Scottish football with officiating? Where is the consistency? There are so many decisions that have gone against us, Scott, and to your point earlier on, You can sit here right now and it sounds like sour grapes because we've lost the game. But it just feels every single time I'm coming back from Hampden, there is a decision that's gone against us that's cost us a game. See if Ralston goes off for the... in fact, if Ralston or Trusty goes off and it's in extra time and it's 10v10, different game altogether. See the extra time, and we'll get on to it, right? I thought our players fought very hard to keep us in the game and to pull it back to one each and to get us into extra time at that point. See if we go into extra time and it's 10v10 or, God forbid, 10v9 or 10v8. It's a different game altogether. So I'm scunnered, Scott, absolutely scunnered, and we'll come on to the actual game in a second. But no, from a referee decision perspective, the inconsistency is laughable.
Rob, one of the things that Craig has jumped onto the YouTube channel tonight, we're honking first half and second half, we worked hard, which should always be a non-negotiable. The difference in performance to each half was startling, and it's easy to think that when the sort of players have went at half time, hopefully pretty pissed off, they've been given a bit of rocket and then sent back out. You almost expected that maybe they would come out in the second half, and because there has been the Asgard incident, there may be a change in formation, this very slight tweak, but there didn't appear to be, which they just basically dropped the guy in the middle where Asgard was playing, and he sort of went with the status quo and maintained what he had for a period. Were you surprised at that? Do you think he could have maybe almost ripped up the book at that point and start again?
Well, I think you've got to look at what Asgard's contribution was before he actually get sent off. And to be honest, you'd be forgiven for forgetting he was actually on the pitch, because he didn't really do much during that first half. I think the frustrating thing for me was, we said that the first half we were poor. We still created 3 clear-cut chances that we should do a hell of a lot better with. The 2 Chermiti opportunities, one of them's got to bust the back of the net, and they're asking chance as well. So while we didn't play well in that first half, we still get 3 clear-cut opportunities that we just didn't, take. And that's the thing that really frustrates me with that. Second half, absolutely, there was a bit more fire, there was a bit more guts, there was a bit more organisation. But you cannot get away from the fact that even just the Trusty decision changes that game.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, we are going to be playing the second half 10v10 if that happens. And we fought well and we played well, and I thought we were a better team in that second half. But if you're playing with 10v10, who knows what other kind of opportunities that you can create. And I know Dougie was talking about Ralston, but he gets booked and he's still fouled another 5 or 6 times after that. We've seen some of the clips where he's just blocking men for making runs past him and stuff. Each one of those decisions could be a yellow card in its own merit. And until the club have the balls to start to actively pursue this in public, we're always going to be sitting here talking about decisions, because we've seen it in the last cup final we played against them, whether it was just in or just out, and the officials involved in those decisions are still there.
Rob, we should touch on that though. You mentioned it about the club acting on this now. That's one positive that's coming out right now, is that the club have gone to the SFA and asked for an explanation as to why Austin Trusty was not red carded.
Yeah. So
hopefully guys like Patrick Stewart have learned lessons. That's where my frustration lies with Danny Rule, just in general at the end of the game. If Stew was in the other foot and Martin O'Neill's in that interview and he's been asked about decisions like that have gone against him, the manager would be starting that narrative right now about decisions have cost us today. Big decisions have cost us today. Danny Rule, I've been a huge fan of Danny Rule. There's a couple of things that we'll get on to: lineup, system, substitutions. But see that post-match press conference, Danny Rule got it all wrong for me. He should have been turning that screw, and I hope he learns very, very quickly that up here you need to fight your corner.
Sheryl,
the only thing with that, sorry, Scotty, the only thing with that is we've seen other managers come out. Was it Stuart Kettlewell came out after that command? It makes no difference. And I know why you're saying that he has to do that, but other managers have came out and spoken about decisions against them, and we've seen how much impact that had today. Absolutely.
That wasn't Rangers versus Celtic, Sheryl.
No, but it was still Celtic. It was still Celtic though, and managers are coming out and questioning it, Dougie, and it makes no difference.
Think of the headline, right? So tomorrow on Sky Sports News, for example, Danny Rose' interview comes right up, followed by the statement from Rangers that they've gone to the SFA. Everyone outside of Scottish football then starts getting drawn attention to the fact there's been another big decision. You bring it up on TV and everyone else starts scratching their head. There's guys, like I watched the game when I came back and the highlights. There's not a single pundit there that doesn't think that's a red card. Everyone's going to look at that and say it's a red card. So all of a sudden, the entire narrative from the mainstream media is going to be, inconsistent decisions. Danny Rule needs to put that pressure on, and for me, showed his inexperience there.
Nah, to be honest, mate, it's not up to the manager to do that. It's up to the club to do it. It's the executives at the club that need to be lobbying the SFA to do that. You can't put that on the manager.
Everyone. We should all be one. Every single person right now should be banging the drum, not just about this game, but we should be compiling a dossier right now of every single decision that's going against us at every time to Hampden. How Nick Walsh is allowed to referee another Old Firm game at Hampden after last season's debacle with Frank Connor running the line is just beyond me. We should be piling the pressure on right now.
Do you know, it's interesting you say that, because I remember when the and listen, there's been loads of good points made there, I should add. When the officials were announced, and all the obvious things, regardless of they were never going to pick a good referee for the Rangers Celtic game semi-final. Let's be honest, they're never going to pick someone that you think, you know what, I'm okay with him, he'll be a decent referee in the day, because they're never going to get someone that's going to suit everyone, suit us, suit them. It ain't going to happen. I think when you see the boy Connor's name in the selection of officials, it instantly makes you think, oh shit, it's going to be one of those afternoons. And I think realistically, sure enough, it did turn into one of these afternoons, as we now know, of course. Sheryl, I want to go back to sort of pre-2 o'clock, when the lineups are announced, and we know that Danny Rule, has decided to maintain the three that started and played relatively well at Easter Road midweek. Were you surprised he never changed it, considering he spoke post-match? They went with a three because Hibs were sort of playing it long relatively often. There was no danger Celtic were going to do that today at any point. I wonder if you were surprised and maybe not changing it up a little bit, or were you surprised that he stayed with the three?
No, I think it actually worked quite well. I know the point that you're making about Celtic not playing that way, but I think they looked really, and they worked really well as a three as well. And I think obviously Hibs had to make that the Cadden substitution, didn't they? Because we were getting so much joy from Makoma up and down the wing. So no, the only thing that I found a bit strange was, to me beforehand, I thought he was going to play with Asgard almost as a 10 and kind of sit him on McGregor, but that's not the way that it panned out. It looked to me, Asgard kind of ended up going out to the left, and then the amount of space that was in Asgard did nothing. He did very, very little of note, but the amount of space that was then in the middle, and the amount of space that McGregor had, because I assumed that Asgard would then take that role. And it is a bit crap that we have to have somebody on McGregor, but we've seen with Bajrami in the past how that's worked pretty well. But the amount of space that, particularly in the first half, that there was, it was dire, absolutely dire.
Sure,
and we were speaking beforehand, sorry Scotty, about how poor Giga looked. But as Rob said, what do you do? Take Giga out and then change everything? Because he actually came on a game the second half in Easter Road. I thought Giga looked pretty good. That challenge that he had the beginning of the second half at Easter Road, but he was really, really poor in patches today.
So I was going to come on to Giga, because I felt I have to say, I felt in the first half he was particularly poor. I think he looks every inch a guy that has been brought up in the summer by a previous manager and asked to play a way that he's not comfortable with, and he ain't been able to get out of his system yet. I don't doubt that the guy can defend, but he looks very much like the sort of guy that's still trying to play the way that Russell Martin was trying to get him to play, and it wasn't working then, and it certainly ain't working now. I thought it was poor, and I see some of the chats are backing that up. Interestingly, Sheryl, when you bring up the McGregor situation, obviously at Ibrox in the Old Firm game, Asgard done a great job of taking him completely out of the equation that afternoon on a particularly shite Old Firm game, I have to say. But the interesting thing, and this, I can't quite get my head around this, was up until Asgard went off, Chermiti seemed to be the one that was dropping deep to try and take care of McGregor, which again just was generally quite confusing for my small brain to try and take notice of. Dougie Chermiti is obviously a guy that is going to be spoken about every single time he plays and doesn't score. A Rangers number 9 in Old Firm matches at Hampden that has the 2 chances that he has today, has the ability to write the headlines for the week. And the reality is he's failed and he doesn't look like he's ever going to be a successful Rangers number 9.
Yeah, in a scrappy quality, low quality game, when you get big chances, you need to put them away.
Yeah.
And there are so many points being made in the chat right now. So obviously I've went on about the officiating, right? And one of the things that I said was we are our own worst enemy, because in the chat right now, the comments right now are basically saying we need to look at ourselves. We were not good enough today to win the game. Both things can be true, right? We can be complaining of the officials, whilst the second part of the pod, right? So we wanted to get that out of the way because that's the main talking point today. And I think if we didn't talk about that first, everyone would be in the comments right now questioning why we've not spoken about the decisions. We've now spoken about the decisions. We now need to talk about the game.
Yeah.
Both can be correct, right? In the game itself, so I know you asked me about Chermiti, right? But you asked a question around the first half and the second half, and I was going to interject. Do you know, for me, and Chermiti comes into this for me, we just had far too many players that hadn't played in a big game like this before for Rangers. They hadn't played in a big Old Firm. They hadn't played in a cup semi-final at Hampden. And to be honest, Scott, I think the difference in the first half and the second half, we shat the bed in the first half. I genuinely think there was a lot of players who looked overwhelmed by the occasion. Tavernier called it out in his pre-match interview, maybe yesterday I seen it, where he said a lot of these new boys are going to be surprised at how frantic this game's going to be. And I genuinely think for a lot of them that's what it is. You know, there's a lot, right? I think we started 5 new players from the summer and 11 today. I think it was 5. Somebody will correct me, no doubt. Giga, for instance, looked like a rabbit or a deer in headlights. I thought Magoma, first half, it's poorest I've seen him as well. But Chermiti as well is another one that just looked really lost for me. And I know we called it out. I called out to you before we went live in terms of the subs. One of the subs that surprised me is I was surprised that Russell Martin, that Danny Rule took off Danilo at halftime rather than Chermiti, because I get that Chermiti's big and he's strong. He's going to put himself about and cause problems. Danilo's better than what Chermiti is. And when I was going to the game today with one of my mates, when the team sheet came out, one of the things, or the 2 things that I said was, 1, I thought it lacked pace throughout the team, and 2, I didn't see where the goals were going to come from, and it took the penalty for us to score. But see, when you've got big chances like Chermiti one, he needs to finish it. And I'll stop going off in massive tangents because I'll be, not that you've got an agenda, but I'll be causing your hair to fall out.
No, I mean, so the Chermiti one's really frustrating for me. I think I've said on this podcast previously before, I said a couple of times last year when we had CD9 in and around the building, and I remember thinking for all he had a relatively decent scoring record, he could have had way more if he was just better, Rob.
Yeah.
And you know, we've been lucky enough to be brought up in a sort of era where Rangers number 9s were prolific. They could play honking but score, and we'd win 1-0. McCoist, Boyd, Miller anytime he wore the number 9, Jelic anytime he was in and around that discussion. All these guys have that ability. Do you know what I mean? That capability to go ice cold when they need to be ice cold and score. And Chermiti, as I say, has 2 chances today to be the headline maker, to rewrite the full narrative around him, around his relationship with Kevin Thelwell, around everything that's went on with Thelwell pre him coming to Rangers. And he blew it. He absolutely blew it. And the reality is that I think it's going to be really hard for this kid to come back from this full landscape and scenario that he finds himself in just now, because we had he scored obviously last weekend, great. probably made the fatal error of giving it the shut your mouth signal to the stands, which was silly because while I thought he was okay midweek, he's had a shocker today. And he's our biggest signing of a very expensive summer, the most expensive summer we've had in a long, long time. The price tag, certainly, Rob, isn't his fault. I get that. But he's the Rangers number 9 and he has to be clinical, he has to be ice cold, and he has to score in Old Firm games any opportunity he gets in the 6-yard box.
100%. I think you look at it today and he looked every bit the £8 million 21-year-old that hasn't scored in 2.5 years or whatever it was. And the 2 chances that he had are glorious chances. And, there will be a little bit of revisionism about Dessers, and we spoke about this before we come on air.
Yeah.
I put my hat on that he does score at least one of them, but the one difference that you're going to get is you'll get a shift out of him.
Yeah.
Chermiti sometimes looks a little bit lackadaisical, not as fit as he should be. You take the price tag out of it, he's not a number 9 that you're going to stick your money on to score you the goals to win you the league. And to be honest, I wouldn't say Miovski is either, because he hasn't exactly set the header alight since he's came either. And you take Igaman and Dessers and you compare them to what we've got in Chermiti and Miovski, we've downgraded, but we've spent more money, in my opinion. And while Dessers we'd be ripping our hair out and would probably look like you, Scotty. He'd still put a shift in and he'd still get the odd goal, but he's got a lot of work to do, mate. It looked positive. Getting his first goal was great. Getting an assist during the week against Hibs for Danilo, but you can't be giving it to fans if you're missing chances like that today. And regardless of how bad we played in that first half, it still goes back to we had 3 glorious chances to get an equaliser in that first half, and all 3 times we fluffed our lines. And I tell you, somebody that shouldn't be getting missed either is our wonderful Belgian prince, Nico Raskin, because he has been ranked for the past 4 or 5 weeks as well. And today, I didn't think it was a particularly good game from him either. So every player in that team has got to take a little bit of responsibility, whether they're a fan favourite or not. They've all got to look themselves in the mirror and realise that they've all probably got a few levels that they need to step up here. So it's going to be interesting to see how they react from this, because this is the first real setback under Danny Rule, apart from obviously the brand performance. It's going to be interesting. Only the small matter of Roma.
Can I come in on sorry, Rob, on what you said there in terms of how they react to it? That's a massive worry for me, because it's almost like there's a kind of cultural thing around the club now. We've got these issues that we've had for years. There's no leadership, and results like this seem to be all right. We don't seem to learn anything. There doesn't seem to be any massive kind of improvement afterwards. And it doesn't matter. We can point to the fact that it's a different group now. We've got players coming in. There's still no leadership. There's still an acceptance of these results, of these performances, and nothing's changing. So it's a massive job in terms of being able to change that mindset. And I don't even think it stops at Tavernier. I think it's now a culture and an acceptance that's embedded in the team and in the club.
So I do want to come back. I do want to come back on Raskin, because I think it's a really good point that I didn't think Raskin had a great game today at all. Should have scored. I was quite surprised he was taken off for extra time, to be honest with you, purely because it left us with nothing in the centre of the park. We had no centre midfielders in there effectively. I know that Mikey Moore's seen to be a guy that can play in and around that area, but to have Ant-Man on there and James Tavernier, who played in, I think, 4 different positions today, was quite bizarre. I want to go back to Chermiti, and I don't want it to become a bashing session for that fella at all. I genuinely don't. But what I would say is that I remember when Michael Beale chased Jose Cifuentes for the duration of the summer when he was in Ibrox, and lots of people thought that he'd signed him because he was really good in Football Manager. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's elements of that are very similar in the reason that Chermiti found himself at Ibrox, because it just looks like I've signed him before when I was taking a break in a season. Fuck it, let's get him up. We'll see how he can do. And it's frustrating because our full part of the bounty in the summer has gone on that guy, and he ain't hitting the ground running and doesn't look like he's going to hit the ground running at any point. Dougie, I interrupted you. I apologise.
No, I was. Do you know, it's also a build on that, right? Because Rob had touched on Dessers and Eagleman, right? We lost our 3 top goal scorers in the summer because Cherry obviously loan ended. We sold Eagleman and we sold Dessers. We lost our 3 top goal scorers. In that game today, what I would say, right, is the positive is I think we worked really hard, particularly in the second half. I think the effort was there, but I think the bit that was just missing for me was the quality. And see, when you spend £8 million on a striker, when you spend £20 million net, one of the questions I asked my mate Scott in the car on the way home was, what's the core of the squad next year? Who's the core of our squad? You've just went and spent all that money, right? What are you building around? What have you added? Because in my opinion, that's where you start pointing the finger at Kevin Thelwell, right? And I don't want to turn this all on a Kevin Thelwell bashing now, right? But we've downgraded in our forward. We've downgraded in a lot of positions, but in particular up front, we've gone from having Dessers and Eganman as our main 2 options and Danilo as a third option who didn't get a lot of game time, to all of a sudden, when I'm in the car on the way there, I'm thinking Danilo's our best chance of getting a goal from open play. And that's a reflection on the 2 players ahead of him. Shermiti, I think Shermiti's young. I don't want to write Shermiti off yet. I think there's something in Shermiti. I really do. I think it's probably because he's big, he's powerful, and he's got a physical presence. I think there's something there to nurture. But unfortunately, he is always. Do you know, when we signed him and when we spoke in one of the very first podcasts, I said we're always going to judge Shermiti and Kevin Thelwell on the Shermiti signing and the outlay that we put on him. The fact that it was so much money, that will always be held against him. We're all talking about Shermiti right now, and I've seen somebody in the comments saying Miovski should have started today. We're not focusing on how terrible Miovski was when he came on.
Yeah.
Miovski did not win a single ball that was put up to him. He held nothing up. He contributed nothing. And actually, seeing recent games when I've been watching Miovski's been awful. And, you talk about Shermiti being a Football Manager signing, for example. I think Miovski is a proper panic signing of we have, and I go back to this whole summer recruitment, right, of we're only signing players that we know from the game that we know. And Miovski happened to come across the desk as, well, he's played in Scottish football. He might have failed in La Liga for Girona, but he scored a couple of goals for Aberdeen. Miovski's not good enough. I'm really sorry, but the downgrade from Dessers and Egerman right now to Shermiti and Miovski's criminal, and that's before we even talk about the fact that we had Czerny chipping in with goals from the not number 9 position. We had Gassama start really well at the beginning of the season. We don't have goals getting chipped in from across the team in open play right now. And, I've seen some comments on Gassama, I'm sure we'll get to it. Dare I say, Gassama's quickly morphing into Rabi Mutondo.
Oof.
Crikey. That's a shout and a half, by the way.
That is a shout and a half.
That's almost as much of a shout as there's a player in Trinity and we just need to nurture it.
Yeah, see, I'm getting slaughtered in the comments. I tell you, right, and this is a whole thing about value, right? See, if we got Shermiti in a free transfer, everyone would be saying right now, young guy, 21 years old, there's a player in there, we'll give him time. The fact that we spent so much money on him is criminal. But I see some people putting comments in straight away about 2 of Celtic's goal scorers today are 20 and 21 years old. So we shouldn't be holding it again. We shouldn't be saying he's a player for the future. He is here for the here and now. At Rangers, we should not be signing project players, and we are not a project club. We should not be signing players who are not good enough to play for Rangers today and who are not good enough to win trophies for Rangers today, because it's signings like Shermiti and Asgard, by the way, that have lost us a trophy. I know it's not a final, but we are out of one of the competitions, and at the unveiling of Danny Rule, when we had Andrew Kavanagh and Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell sitting there gaslighting supporters saying, we're still in 4 competitions, guys. Don't you worry. We're not anymore. We're sitting bottom of a 36-team league in the Europa League and we're now out the cup. Like, it's about time some people get their head out their arses and start focusing on what we need to do in January.
Can we add Ant-Man to that list as well, Dougie?
Who?
Ant-Man, Oliver Ant-Man.
Do you know Ant-Man? Do you know, that's where I just think, and we're away off tangent again, Scott, right? But this is where I just think people running Rangers Football Club don't understand Rangers Football Club right now. See Ant-Man, he's got the heart of a mouse. And there's different forms of bravery. There's the bravery in terms of throwing yourself into challenges, but there's also the bravery of, I'm going to get the ball. I am the creative player. I'm going to just go on a run. I'm going to take it away from the pressure. I'm going to do something. You guys will know, right? And people here will hopefully have listened to our podcast in previous episodes, and they'll know that we're usually not as ranty as this. Well, sometimes I am, right? One player that I've targeted a lot of abuse at this season is Mikey Moore. Do you know when Mikey Moore came on, he had a set of balls.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys, and you know, I hate to jump around, Scott, because I know that you've probably got these things on your pad, right?
Gone, mate. It's long gone, honestly.
Mikey Moore was excellent against Hibs, by the way. Really unlucky not to be in the starting 11 today. He's the one that I called out in our WhatsApp chat that I was surprised wasn't starting today. See, when he came on, he was one of the players that was just determined to just try and grab the game and do something with it. And sometimes an old firm game is where you find out a lot about your players. And I tell you what, I think we found out about guys like Ant-Man being cowards. And Mikey Moore, well, maybe after all, Mikey Moore is going to be a top prospect in the future.
Do you know, I thought Mikey Moore was quite good when he came on today, I must be honest. I think the key for Mikey Moore is just getting him to play in a position that accommodates his qualities. I think we saw Russell Martin try him either side, didn't work. We saw him try it in a 10 on occasion, just off of a striker, didn't work. When he's playing as, and I hate to speak in numbers, but see when he's playing it as one of 2 8s, he actually looks quite handy. He's got great ability to travel with the ball, and I think in matches like that today, we needed someone who was capable of doing that properly. He did do that. You spoke about Majowski, and I completely agreed with everything you said about Majowski. I kind of thought when he came in, clever signing off the back of how successful he was with our friends in the Northeast, and I did think he'd be a good signing. However, there was a moment today where it was like he was doing tic-tac-toe with Kasper Schmeichel to see who was going to pick the ball up, when all he had to do was tap it with his right foot and knock it by him, and it's a goal. And I've watched it back a couple of times, and I've no idea how a professional footballer can be so uncomfortable on his right foot to not blast that by the keeper, or at least make an attempt to get to the ball to bring us back into the game at that point. So I completely agree with you on that, Dukes. Sheryl, Jack Butland, should he save the Callum McGregor shot? You're on mute, darling.
I think he just misjudges it, doesn't he? It looks like he dives a bit too early, and he does. And do you know what? He had a number of brilliant saves today, but he made an absolute arse of that one, unfortunately. But again, you have to look at the amount of space that McGregor had to take that shot. Just poor. But I think that's one of those. And I think we much prefer this season's Butland to last season's Butland. But I think hands up, he made an absolute arse of it. It was the same with the goal at Kilmarnock, didn't he, when he misjudged that as well? But no, I agree 100%. He just dived a wee bit too early. I
don't want to make it a Dougie show, as somebody's commented, right?
Liar.
See, you're saying about Callum McGregor, right? The biggest issue with me there is the time that he had outside the box to take the shot, right? Mm-hmm. A large part of me at the time, I'm saying to my dad, that's because we've taken our whole central midfield off. You know, we've not got... But what's Lyle Cameron got to do to be involved in the squad? Joe Rothwell, by the way, I said it weeks ago, he is unfit. he looked a man down when he came on as well. But see the Callum McGregor one, we should have central midfield players in that space. But it was Tav and Mikey Moore at that point in the middle of the park, who are not natural players in that position, who are not gravitating towards Callum McGregor, who always seems to be given the freedom of a football pitch when he's playing against us, and that's what he's capable of. So, yeah, I can point fingers at Butland for that, and I think Butland should be doing a lot better for that. And I agree with you, Sheryl. I think he made a lot of really good saves in the game, but Christ almighty, close him down.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's in an area of the pitch where you just can't afford to give anyone time to get a shot off. It's as simple as that. And someone should have been right in his face. Listen, it's not unusual. I remember we've seen people sort of play against Callum McGregor before to try and sort of stop him dictating play. I mentioned Asgard earlier on the season, and he done that, which was great. We've seen they tried it with Cantwell previously, where I think Cantwell had one good game against Callum McGregor where he managed to do it, but we seem to always miss that sort of that flag to hold over him and say, right, I'm going to sit on you, and you are not going to get anywhere for the duration of the match. And it's as simple as that.
Bajrami did it, Scotty. Remember Bajrami?
Done it well. Bajrami did do it well. You're absolutely right, Sheryl. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask that question, right? Where's Bajrami as well? Because Bajrami and Cameron are both not on the bench today. We had 4 wingers on the bench today. See, Raskin and Diamande ran the race. They were both knackered. I still think Raskin had a wee bit more in him and shouldn't have been subbed, because I think that changed the game. But when they're coming off, we didn't have any centre mids to bring on. I get that Rothwell came on eventually, but Cameron would have been a better option. Bajrami would have been a better option to go centre mid than surely having Tav and Moore there.
Yeah, Sheryl,
you've got to question what he's doing in training, mate. To be honest, if he's not even been able to make a bench like that, and ultimately we can't. Let's not rewrite history. We talk about players that will get the heart of a mouse. There's your biggest fucking critic right there. Excuse my French. When was the last time that Bajrami put himself in the line? Now, don't get me wrong. We've seen glimpses when he first came in and he was playing on the left-hand side of the talent that he could bring. But he's not exactly going to be somebody that is going to be fighting for everything and putting his body in the line. So we can't get too hung up in that.
I agree with you, Rob, but I would say in these games, he's got the kind of Diamande thing about him, that in these games, he actually does tend to do better. And maybe it's that big game thing. Maybe there was a couple of European games he did all right. And you certainly wouldn't trust him at Kilmarnock away on a Dreek Wednesday night. But I think actually in the Old Firm game, he did do a really good job on Callum McGregor. And maybe this is, I mean, to me, I agree with you. It is like he's frozen out and he's maybe absolutely gash in training. But I think he would have been a better option today than Asgard.
The biggest one that we missed in midfield was wee Barron, surprisingly, today. Unfortunately, his suspension, his suspension, the work rate, the spoiling that he does, him and Raskin potentially as the sitters, and maybe Dio playing a little bit further up potentially would have been a good midfield 3, but ultimately he wasn't available, so we can't be too upset with him.
Where's Cameron?
Aye.
He was fit. Cameron was fit.
Mm-hmm.
So why is he not on the bench? I get your point, Rob, about Barron. I think Barron was a huge miss today. Does that show where we are at the moment? And does that reflect on the summer recruitment again? Because I see everyone's agreeing the comment about Rothwell, right? Rothwell, I've got a mate that's a Leeds fan who thinks that Rothwell would be a starting midfielder for Leeds in the English Premiership. Rothwell is terrible.
I think it comes back to what you're asking me to do, mate. Ultimately, we're trying to get him to play as a 6 in a position that's a competitive midfielder. He's not a competitive midfielder. He's a luxury player that is more creative and better further up the pitch. Now, we haven't seen that, but that's what Leeds seen. We've asked him to come in and try and replace Raskin at the start of the season. He ain't that type of player. And until we play to a player's strengths, we're never going to see the best of them. Now, Rothwell absolutely looks completely and utterly unfit. But if you're asking him to play as a 6, he's not going to be able to make the tackles. He's not got the engine to be doing the dirty stuff that the likes of Barron or Raskin can do. So you completely and utterly nullify any form of talent that he does have. You've got to play him further up the pitch. Now, he came into that game today and he was so far off the pace that he shouldn't have been. We Cameron would have been a much better option to have on the bench than Rothwell. But ultimately, what hindsight is a wonderful thing. It's now looking at how we utilise that and change that moving forward, and hopefully we'll begin to see the likes of Lyle Cameron, Wee Barron and stuff getting more game time, because they're the people that will be the workhorses in the side, and let some of these more creative players do a bit more of the kind of playing forward.
Of course, for me, the problem you have with Conor Barron and Lyle Cameron is they're both Scottish, and we know we can't do that.
And they're tiny.
And they're wee. As we know in this country, we guys just can't do stuff, generally. Sheryl, Scoot C7 takes me on to the next agenda, and there's only a couple more agenda points to go after this. Can anyone on the panel, I love it when people call us a panel. It feels like we've been doing it for years. I love it. I'm totally involved with that. Can anyone on the panel tell me what Raskin actually does? He doesn't protect the back four or assist or score goals, has a great chance pre-half-time. Didn't have a great match generally, however, and I've already said I was surprised that he never kept him on for the extra time, considering there was no other centre midfielders visibly on or around it. He had a poor afternoon, Sheryl.
I think he looked slightly better around that 60-minute mark when we were still 1-0 down, but we came in it more. We were actually controlling the game at that point, and I thought he was driving us forward. But I think overall, Scotty, I think he was poor. I think he's kind of living off his reputation, isn't he? And I think he's there because at the moment, we don't have, as poor as he's been, there's not really another option. He's living off his reputation. But I think it is time. I don't know, you think well, maybe it's time to bench him a wee bit, but we know what he's capable of, and I think that's why he's staying in there, because he's actually not showing us at the moment what he's capable of, and I don't know why that is. Has he got one eye on the World Cup? I don't know. I don't know what you guys could maybe give me an update what's happening with his contract stuff as well, because there was all the chat of that over the summer that if he doesn't sign anything else, then we need to get rid of him quickly.
I think he was in talks to sign something when the vegetarian was around, and then the vegetarian disappeared.
Listen, don't diss vegetarians, right?
Well, I apologise. I'll go back. Let me rewind that. He was talking about an extension when the vegan was around. However, the vegan disappeared. New guy came in, and I have no idea where the extension talks have went since there. I really like Nico Raskin, and I think there's a guy that you could build a full team around there. I really do. There was times last season we saw him play as captain, and I actually felt he led like a captain. And I don't want it to get into a captain discussion. I honestly don't. I can't be bothered with it tonight. But there was no, we're not doing it. No. Shut up. There was definitely moments where I thought that he looked like he could be a Rangers captain. He was confident. He was good when he was at it. But I just think that there's been that much went on with Nico Raskin this season. We just ain't seen it. It's as simple as that. Right. Is that fair, Rob, do you think?
Absolutely, it's fair, to be honest, mate. And I'll pick up on the captain comment there, mate. Ultimately, you don't need an armband to be a captain in the pitch. You've got to lead from the front. You've got to show it. And ultimately, he's been one of the ones that have been lacking for the last few weeks. You know, the quality that he's shown the back end of last season isn't there. And it hasn't been there since the start of the season. Obviously, there was fallouts under previous management. There was a lot said. To me, he looks like a player playing with one eye on the exit door at the moment. And if that is the case, I don't care how good a player you are, bomb him out. It's almost like Laudrup when he was going to sign the Bosman with Chelsea. He had one eye on the exit door, and that 6 months that we had of him, it was probably the worst we ever saw Laudrup play for us. And if that's the effort that we're going to get for Raskin, I'd much rather give Barron his role in the team and somebody that's at least committed to playing. He might not be as talented, but you're going to get a lot more than you're going to get out of Nico Raskin at the moment. And that's where we need the players to take a bit of responsibility and look at themselves in the mirror to say, are they doing the best that they can just now? They've not got the excuse of the previous manager. You know, we've got a new manager coming in. That there's going to be a new approach to the way that we're playing. It certainly looks as if he's much more pragmatic when it comes to formation, style of play, and all that rubbish that we keep talking about. It's up to them now to show that they want to play under him. And you know, we've got we've got a good player in Raskin. You see what he does when he goes away for Belgium, but he's not producing that form for us at the moment. And ultimately, if he wants to be seen as a leader, he doesn't need an armband to do that. He needs to do it by showing and performing on the pitch and keeping his teammates to account when they're not doing their jobs.
Yep.
We're not seeing enough of that just now. And that's my frustration with him.
And by the way, our captain stepped up today and put away a penalty in the 80th minute at 1-0 down. That's leadership. And he played in 4 positions, and I would say Tav was one of the best players on the pitch today. That's leadership. So see the whole Tav bashing, I think we need to put the Tav bashing in the bin, because see Tav, right? I feel so sorry for him, because that's another game that he's leaving Hampden as a loser. And it's not because of James Tavernier, it's because of the pish that he's surrounded with. Sort out the January transfer window, because see the quality in that park today. For a team that went and spent £20 million net, we are worse than we were last year.
So to me, Dougie, sorry, that's a big worry, because traditionally that January transfer window is not particularly strong. And then also, are we trusting Kevin Thelwell to go after he's made a monumental arse of the summer transfer window to go back in and salvage it in a traditionally piss poor transfer window anyway?
Bingo.
The Kevin Thelwell one.
Good night, everyone.
Bang on, Sheryl. do we genuinely trust Kevin Thelwell to get it right?
No. Based on the body of evidence that we've seen so far, absolutely no chance. Maybe his son will do a better job.
Oh, goodness. No, don't. Right, listen. So there's genuinely 7 minutes to go. And to let you in a wee secret, it's Mr. and Mrs. Patterson's wedding anniversary tomorrow, and I must nip out to the local Tesco's to get a wee £1 value card for the morning. So I need to do that when we finish. So I've got 7 minutes.
You don't just reuse the same one every year, Scott. That's what I do.
I've lost the one for last year. We probably, I don't know what we've done with it. So what do you want to talk to you about?
Dead?
What's that, Dukes?
Who said romance is dead?
Absolutely right. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. What I do want to do is we've obviously heard and read quite a bit in the last week or so about the Scottish-based Rangers-minded coach that's going to come in some way, shape or form. Rob, I wonder if you think having someone that was Rangers-minded, in air commas, sitting on the bench there today would have helped in any way, shape or form? Because one of the things I think Dougie said today, oh, that's nice, Kevin. I think one of the things that Dougie said today was that it was a lot of these players' first Old Firm games, first trip to Hampden, first opportunity to run out onto that stadium. I do wonder if we had someone in there that had done it, a Davis, a Thompson, a McCann, even a Lee Wallace to a degree. I wonder if having someone in there in the dugout beside Danny Rule and his other staff that he's brought in would have been helpful. It seems now we're going to need to wait another couple of weeks before that's actually going to happen. It's
not even just the having somebody like that sitting on the bench next to Danny Rule. It's about having those people in the background and throughout the club that the players are going into every single day. You know, you think of the stories that were told about people in the background team, you know, keeping players' minds focused and reminding them every single day when they're in the training pitch, when they're going in and getting their training gear, just what they're representing, what that badge on that shirt means. Yeah. Now, for me, you've got four people probably that would be in the running for that. You've got Neil McCann, Kevin Thompson, Steve Davis, and Lee Wallace for the names that have been mentioned. Any one of them, I think I would be happy, because ultimately they've seen success at the club and they can help Danny Rule set the expectation of what's required of these players. But it doesn't matter who you've got there. You've still got to have the desire as a player to go and do it yourself. You shouldn't need a Rangers-minded assistant to be in that backroom staff to know that you've got to go in and close down your opposition, throw yourself in front of the ball and actually pass it to a guy in a blue jersey when you're playing against that mob. It should be personal pride that gets you through that, and that's the frustration for me. We can talk about players that haven't experienced that before, but the majority of that team have played against Celtic, and it should be no surprise when you come into a club like this just how important a fixture that is. And if you've not got the personal pride to put that effort in, like we saw in the second half that was lacking in that first half, that's on the players. You can have a full backroom team of players that have played and managed Rangers before, if the players don't do it themselves, it doesn't matter who's sitting on the bench as the management team, in my opinion.
But then that goes back to what we were saying earlier, Rob, that this is now an ongoing, almost over the last, 3 years. It's now a culture that's kind of set in. And I really, really like Neil McCann. I think that he would be a decent choice, but he was part of that group that, with the last group of players, almost threw up their hands and said, "This is murder. These guys aren't listening to us. We're finding it dead difficult to get anything out of them." Now, I know it was Igaman, I think that was aimed at, but there was also issues with players not taking things on board then. So it's a huge cultural thing. And like you say, I don't know if it matters who comes in, because this mindset and this acceptance of being second and being put out or performing really poorly in these games just seems to be completely all right. And how do we change that?
Yeah,
I think the other context that we've got there as well is we need to remember this is a week into the Danny Rule reign. Ultimately, he's not had much time with these players on the grass, and to be able to imprint his idea and what he wants from his team. I think that once we see it in a few weeks' time, the players should look a hell of a lot fitter, because ultimately he'll have had more time with them to be able to work on that. We'll probably offer a little bit more going forward, but it still doesn't change that mindset that we've got in some of these players, that they tend to hide a wee bit. And again, you could include Raskin in that as well. Somebody that's been at the club for a few years, he didn't exactly stand up in the faces of anybody today and have a nasty streak, and that's what you need. I remember the Spurs behind the scenes, Mourinho talking about you need to be a bit of a bastard to be a winner. Yeah. That's what we need. We need a few bastards in the team, and we never signed any of them, unfortunately, in the summer.
Yeah. No, I agree.
See on the bastard comment, do you know one of the players that's just too weak for me? Somebody just put in the comments there about Cornelius and whether we'd sign Cornelius in the summer.
Poor today.
He's another one that's just far too weak. He's a left foot. He can sometimes dribble out from the back. I want my defender to be just powering through everything. Head on the ball away, regardless of who he's up against, going through challenges. There was certain players in that team today that I was a little bit worried about. And for me, it doesn't, there's a point here about the coaching and having somebody there, but Stevie Smith was there. Stevie Smith would have been telling Danny Rule what to expect today. For me, it all comes back to quality. It all comes back to recruitment. And I don't think some of the players suit Rangers, suit Scottish football. They might do. Shamiti might do in the future, but as things stand right now, we've got too many players who just don't suit this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, last thing. I should probably have done this at the start, to be perfectly honest. No, you three, I should probably have done it way before now. Rob, did you see what Steven Gerrard said before the game yesterday?
No, what did he say, mate? I never caught that at all.
So he stopped just short of saying that the structure was what held him back from coming back up the road.
I think you could. There was a couple of things in it. I think he'd obviously gone down the route of, timing wasn't perfect. His family were still back in Bahrain and all that sort of stuff. But I think for him, the comments around things having to be perfect and there being the right belief, I guess, in what you were walking into, probably said a lot more, to be honest. And I think that demonstrates that it was probably more about personalities than it was about timing. The reason that he never came back. Now, don't get me wrong. If he comes back, do we win that game today? I don't think so.
Nah, not at all.
Ultimately, it would have been great to see him back, looking at the shot list. But I don't think we've made a bad decision in Danny Rule, to be honest. For what we've heard so far, he comes across as somebody that isn't arrogant, that will have an open and honest relationship with his players and with us. And communication will not break down if that is the case. We've got to give him time, and I think we keep feeding that Gerrard narrative. It's unfair on him, because ultimately we can't go back in time and appoint him as manager.
Yeah,
it's done, and we've got to move on. But I think it was interesting, the timing of it coming out, and it certainly didn't help the current incumbent, I don't think, with questions and stuff about management.
I think you'll see him back at Ibrox at some point in the future. Who knows when it'll be? And listen, for what it's worth, I think I said before, I was not... The last time we podded, right? The last time we podded, we signed off and we were relatively sure that the following day, Steven Gerrard would be confirmed as the manager. I went away on holiday, and then Kevin Muscat decided he didn't want it either. And before he knew it, Danny Rowe was the manager the very next day. So it's swings and roundabouts, can change very, very quickly, which I think that much is clear. That
you never know. He could be a good assistant.
He might, absolutely. It could be that Rangers-minded guy they bring in. No, I don't think he will be.
So, see to finish a positive, right? Steven Gerrard said the timing wasn't right. A real Rangers man would have stepped forward in a time of need, right? I get the point about we might see him back at some point. For me, we should draw a line under Steven Gerrard and move on, and actually focus on the manager who's here now, who is prepared to take on this challenge, knowing the mess that we are in, who's got us up to third place, who's got us looking like a team fighting for each other again, and back him. And I'll say it now, I'm optimistic under Danny Rule, but he does need to learn from situations like today, and I think he will.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Listen, a big week for the podcast. We're obviously around tomorrow for the flagship of the week. We'll be back and forward as the week passes. We will have a build up to Roma on Thursday night, and all the good stuff that goes on in the podcast during the week, and indeed for next weekend. We return 2 weeks from now. Douglas, good to have you on. I hope we're a bit more cheerier when we speak next.
I'm sorry for being a Dougie show, because I've seen a few people saying that it was tonight, but
you're not sorry, Dougie. That's a lie.
No, he's not sorry, Sheryl.
You're right. Like, there's as much truth in that as there is with we just need to nurture Chermity and he's going to be great.
Let's bookmark that, right? And we'll come back to it in a year or two.
Was Dougie the guy that said we had the best midfield in the league as well?
Oh, no.
I said we had the potential to have the best midfield in the league, and I still think there's certain things to work with. The one, and I'll finish off with this, the one player that's disappointing me in that midfield right now is Asgard, but collectively, they're all not kicking their arse, and at some point, they do need to wake up and start realising they're playing for Glasgow Rangers.
Dougie, I think you're tripping. But I'm really glad you came on tonight. Well done.
If only the Belgian Nico Raskin was playing, we'd be fine.
That's true. That's a fair point. Sheryl, always good to have you on, my friend. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Nice group therapy, as always.
Indeed. And Rob, you're back in a fortnight with us again. Hopefully.
Absolutely, mate. Yes.
Grand idea. Listen, we should thank our sponsors, iSport Media, for looking after us for tonight and all of the season. Come May, we hope there is something to be happy about. Indeed, 2 weeks' time, we hope there is something to be happy about. Please follow us right across social media and all the obvious socials. The YouTube channel, which is here. We are on X and Facebook. Get us following, subscribe and like and comment. Tell your pals, make sure they're doing the same. And we are back 2 weeks from now. Join the guys tomorrow from 7 with the flagship. Good luck to Rangers on Thursday. Have a great week. See you 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show.